I'm gonna show to you, my fellow chessers, the chess game of the FIDE Candidates Champion 2024 in SuperBet Poland 2024 Rapid and Blitz. So let's begin on. Hello, my fellow chessers. D4, and then knight f6, then c4, c6, knight f3, d5. This is his love defense modern line, my fellow chessers. So knight c3, d takes c4, a4, then bishop f5, my fellow chessers. So knight h4, then bishop c8, e3, e5, bishop takes c4, e takes d4, and then e takes d4, and then bishop d6, and then castles kingside, and then castles kingside, and then knight f3. So bishop g4 attacking the knight on f3, and at the same time pinning the knight on f3, my fellow chessers. So let's continue on h3, then bishop takes f3, then queen takes f3, and then queen a5, my fellow chessers. So g4, then knight bd7, g5 attacking the knight on f6, my fellow chessers. So let's continue on knight e8, and then bishop d2 mistake. The best continuation on this position, my fellow chessers, is what? Rook d1. That is the best continuation on this position. So let's continue on bishop d2, bishop d2, bishop b4, attacking the knight on c3. So let's continue on rook e1, and then knight g6 attacking the bishop on c4. That's the idea of knight g6. So bishop d3, rook e8 challenging the rook on e file of white, and then bishop f4, and then knight f8, and then h4. Wow, h4 mistake. The best continuation in this position is rook e5, my fellow chessers, attacking the queen on a5, my fellow chessers. So let's continue on h4 mistake of Gukesh. So knight f5. What's the idea of knight f5? Attacking the pawn on h4, at the same attacking the pawn on d4, my fellow chessers. So let's continue on bishop takes f5, good move, and then queen takes f5, and then king g2 is good move, my fellow chessers. Queen d1, okay. Rook takes e8, and then rook takes e8, and then d5, my fellow chessers. What's the idea of d5? Pushing the pawn. So let's continue on bishop takes c3, my fellow chessers, and then d takes c6, and then b takes c6, and then b takes c3, my fellow chessers. Why? If we go here, we have this as you can see, my fellow chessers. So let's continue on b takes c3. So I'm explaining only, my fellow chessers. So let's continue the game, my fellow chessers. So a5, and then knight g6 attacking the pawn on h4, my fellow chessers. So let's continue on bishop g3, knight e7, a6, advancing the pawn, then queen c8, my fellow chessers, rook a4 mistake of Gukesh. The best continuation in this position is queen e3, my fellow chessers. So let's continue on rook a4, then knight f5, my fellow chessers, and then bishop h2, and then queen g6, my fellow chessers, g6, and then h4. If you're asking why he did not take this fork, we have this, my fellow chessers, defending the pawn on h4, the rook on a4. So let's continue on h5. That's the reason why you do not take this, my fellow chessers. So let's continue on h5, my fellow chessers. So queen e6. What's the idea of queen e6? So let's continue the game. Rook e4, attacking the queen on e6, my fellow chessers. So queen a2, what's the idea of queen a2? Attacking the pawn on a6. Rook! Ay, queen d3. Queen d3, blunder of Gukesh, my fellow chessers. As you can see, my fellow chessers, blunder. What? My fellow chessers? So let's continue the game. Rook takes d3 only, my fellow chessers. As you can see, my fellow chessers, the queen is whole free, my fellow chessers. Whole free. Okay? So let's continue on. Rook takes d3, or rook takes queen on d3. Rook e8, and then king g7, h6, and then knight takes h6, and then Gukesh resigns the game, my fellow chessers. Why? As you can see, my fellow chessers, the black have a extra queen and a2, my fellow chessers. In this position, I think Gukesh is literally blunder in this position on d3. I think Gukesh thinking in this position, if it take this, we have checkmate on this side and this side and this side, and if it take, we have this. And I don't think so, my fellow chessers. If we have this, my fellow chessers, and if it take this and this, we have no idea. I think, my fellow chessers, Gukesh is literally what? A blunder on d3.